everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight, episode 400 and something. It's hard to tell because we record these out of order, but we are here today. I am Peter, of course, and I'm joined as always by Tim.
I don't think any living thing should have to suffer.
This is a horror movie podcast, and today we are going to talk about The Turning, which was a movie that came out in January. And you know that it's always a good sign when a horror movie comes out in January. With few exceptions, they tend to suck. So this was one we actually made the choice before all the quarantining started, before everything else. We just made the choice that we didn't want to risk paying money for this one, at least not full cinema ticket price, and we wanted to come watch it at home when it was cheaper, readily available. And here we are today to finally talk about it. Starring Mackenzie Davis from Black Mirror and, of course, Blade Runner 2049 and a few other things. And then, of course, Finn Wolfhard from Stranger Things, who one day, I swear, will be in something that's set present day. I don't know when that'll happen, but it'll happen. Because honestly, Tim, I had no idea this was set in 1994. See when it started and the news was on and it said Kurt Cobain had a memorial today because he committed suicide 2 days ago. I was like, wait, what? This is 1994? Why?
Well, I mean, it's pretty vital to the plot. I couldn't imagine this set at any other time.
And it'd be one thing if you said, oh, well, because the book was set then, except no, it wasn't, because a movie was based on the book called The Innocents that came out in the 60s, so I'm fairly confident that the setting in the book was not the mid-90s, so...
Honestly, if I had to guess, I know, Finn Wolfhard, has, a band, and he's super into, music, and I wouldn't be surprised if he, one of his, I don't know about demands, but I don't know, maybe suggestions or something was that he wanted it to be in the 90s grunge era or something.
Well, do you think he's like his character in the movie where he's really demanding and is like, look, I'll do your shitty little horror movie, but I want to play the drums. Right?
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised.
So this is based on The Turning of the Screw, if I'm remembering that title correctly, which is also the basis for the next season of Haunting of Hill House, which is called The Haunting of Bly Manor, which is coming up, presumably still later this year. We're still expecting October for that, but this is based on that book. Like I say, there was a movie in the 60s. I think there was another movie maybe in the 90s as well, and then we've got a TV show coming up that's going to be a 10-episode adaptation of it. The trailer for this looked bad. There's no two ways about it. It just looked bad from the start. It was coming out in January. The deck was stacked. Even though it had some interesting cast members. I like Mackenzie Davis and Finn Wolfhard. I like in Stranger Things, and he's good in it as well. At chapter 1 and a bit of 2, he's fine in that. So there was maybe some mild, but then again, it wasn't that long ago we were doing Winchester with or even Pet Sematary. Jason Clarke, the poor bastard, keeps been in these really bad horror movies that came out in February, March time every year. Not this year, of course. This year, 2020 just decided to be horrible in every other possible way. But here we are. So, The Turning is about a live-in tutor played by Mackenzie Davis, who she's actually a teacher, but she's basically given this job to go and tutor this little girl who lives in a big mansion. Her parents died recently. Your typical Batman origin type of thing. But she's on her own, and she's going to. Well, she's on her own despite the fact she's got like a maid, kind of her Alfred, if you will, who lives there with her, and also her older brother, played by Finn Wolfhard, who does leave and go to school, this boarding school, but does come back during the course of the film. And she's there, but of course the horror aspect of this is that slowly over the course of the film she starts to really question, okay, why did the previous live-in tutor disappear, why did she leave, and begins to see things, ghosts perhaps in the reflections and things like that, and your spooky haunted house potential kind of movie, the paranoia that comes with it. That's the gist of The Turning. So I shall ask Tim, the second movie of the year that got an F on Cinema Score. For the record, the first one was The Grudge, which we already did, and also has a 35 on Metacritic, a 3.8 on IMDb, and the Rotten Tomatoes score, I think the last time I checked, was at 12%. With all that kept in mind, Tim, how do you feel about The Turning?
I was a little hopeful for this one, and I would say
why?
I like I liked I was into it for like the first maybe like 3 or 4 minutes. Because I liked the like when she gets to the house, I was like, ooh, I like this house. It's kind of spooky. It kind of reminds me of like Castlevania with it's like big elaborate
Ooh.
rooms and like like shrubs and like all these different sections. I could imagine
Tim
like
was into the shrubs. The shrubbery is what did it for Tim.
But yeah, it quickly spirals into being yeah, pretty bad. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, I think this might be one of the worst movies we've ever done for the show.
Here's the thing.
It's like,
Here's the thing. See, for the first 2/3, I wouldn't have agreed with that. The first 2/3, I thought it was really mediocre and boring, but I didn't think it was as bad as other things we've done. Right? It was just,
sure.
It was just really rough and not good, and it felt like a January horror movie. Here's the thing. This might have the worst ending that we've ever talked about on this show.
You know what it feels like to me? Like
Yes.
the way I described it is it feels like they had the movie complete done with the ending and then they decided, "Hey, let's also put the alternate ending on." Like 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 you watch a DVD and it's like, with never before seen like alternate ending. It's like they had that, but then they were like, well, no one buys DVDs anymore, so let's just throw this on the actual movie. It's like it's absolutely insane. Like I'd heard yeah, that the ending was like really like out there, but yeah, by the time you're watching the movie you kind of forget about it, and then it does get to a point where you kind of are like, oh, this doesn't seem as crazy as people are talking about. But then it happens, and you're like, oh, Jesus, this is, wow, yeah, did not see this coming.
It goes for this sort of twist. So this is the thing, where as much as I like the alternate ending theory, because it's funny, it clearly is this intentional thing where it wants us to go, oh my God, they just pulled that. Oh my, we're so impressed. I'm baffled. I mean, I was into the shrubbery in the first 10 minutes, but now I'm just overtaken with the swift release and awe of the storytelling, and it feels so unfinished. It feels like you say that it feels like an alternate ending was tacked on. I actually think it feels more like they forgot to actually put the ending on after they had their twist.
Yeah,
because it does this thing. There's actually something kind of playing as the credits are rolling. So it's not really just sort of
right.
subtle thing, but there's this visual happening behind the credits as it's playing, and I actually thought there was going to be a post-credit scene of
me too.
At the end but I sort of skipped ahead and it just it went black. So if there was a post-credit scene at the very end, I didn't see it because I just gave up. But
there's not a scene, but there's like an image, I guess.
There's an image.
Like,
oh
yeah, like
what?
But I mean, it's pretty much the same thing that you're seeing through the credits. I mean, we'll get to it, but it's not like there's no talking. It's not like an actual scene where people talk, or there's no whoever the Nick Fury equivalent of the turning universe is doesn't come out, and so there's nothing like that.
Yes, but Tim, what about the shrubs? Yeah. Was there shrubs, and how were they?
Unfortunately, I don't know. We're left to wonder.
So yeah, we can't obviously talk about what the ending is until we get to spoilers, because we're starting spoiler free, of course. We always do. We'll give you a warning in the middle. I should have said that earlier, but I was too excited about talking about the quality of this film. Sure. I honestly, the going through the plot like we sometimes do is going to be more difficult, I think, because it's a series of just like generic creepy moments for the most part, which is why I'm saying the first 2/3 is just really kind of generic. The only thing that sticks out about the first 2/3 is Finn Wolfhard's character and the way he talks to Mackenzie Davis's character sometimes. It's like, oh, they're doing that with this. Oh, okay. But other than that, it's just kind of bland and, la-di-da, typical January horror movie. And then the last, 10 minutes... Because this is the thing, I actually thought it got to laughable bad territory before the twist. Because once we start seeing a certain thing, I thought this just looks bad. And it's just coming off as laughable and goofy, and I'm not into it. And it's kind of if anything, I wish it was just this stupid throughout, so that I'd have been more entertained in a goofy way, instead of just being bored for 80 minutes and then it hits me with this. Like, maybe I'd be laughing if this was the first couple of minutes. But then it does the twist thing, and I'll be honest, Tim, I actually went back and watched the moment the twist kicks in again, because I thought I missed something. I thought I missed... And, like, there's so little... Like, technically, they set up something. Technically, there is a seed that sets up why this thing happens at the end. However, the thing that happens at the end, despite the fact that there is the seed was not growing throughout the film. There was nothing throughout the film that suggested that that it was going in this direction where we were questioning this or that or whatever. There was never that throughout the whole thing. So the twist itself comes off as really weird. And then, not only that, then there's a scene after the twist, which is just kind of this weird standalone thing that has no ending to it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, I know what you mean, even though it's like, yeah, a little hard to tiptoe around it, but yeah, no, it is very stupid and out of nowhere, and I also feel like it's a they use a device that I feel like a lot of other like bad horror movies use, that's like a very easy scapegoat to like blame things on. But yeah, this movie's like such a like a offender of it. I will say the like, if I'm gonna give it like a slight compliment, like you kind of mentioned earlier, like the there are good people in it. Like I'm not really too familiar with Mackenzie Davis. Like I don't think I've seen like the other stuff you mentioned, but she, just looking at her though, like she looked very familiar. I was like, I know I've at least seen this actress before, and yeah, like she is like a good actress, and Finn Wolfhard's like good, and I even thought like the little girl like was good. She's doing a very like young precocious kid thing, but she can act, which you don't always get with like young kid actors. But yeah, it's just so, the story's just so bland, and honestly I found it frustrating because like I
don't know why I didn't mention this. Mackenzie Davis was also in the newest Terminator movie. That's a weird one to miss out, but
oh yeah.
The Terminator Dark Fate.
But like it really frustrates me that, and I hate when people like do this in movies, but I feel like, not that this would like solve problems, but I just really wanted her character to at some point talk to someone about what's going on. Because like you're seeing all these really stupid, cheap, generic ghost stuff, but never at any point is she like talking to people saying like, hey, is this house haunted? What's going on with these ghosts? Like what, you know what I mean?
On this subject, around the hour mark of the movie, I checked how much was left, and I couldn't believe I was like 2/3 through, because it felt like, despite the fact that it felt like an eternity to get there, it didn't feel like the plot had moved forward enough to be 2/3 through. It felt like, wait, we're still just setting up the thing. We're not even at the point yet where the character's like really starting to lose her shit because she's seeing things and hearing things. It all feels very, I don't know. It's really frustrating because it's doing a lot of really generic things. Because this is the thing, for the first half of the movie, technically there's not really any horror. It just kind of forces some extra little things in there to give it some jump scares so that we know it's a horror movie, because it'll be these little moments where she'll turn and she'll think she sees something in a reflection or something, and there'll be like a loud, string scare, in the soundtrack, and it does that a bunch of times, and every time it did it, all I could think was like, because the way this story is built, for better or worse, the whole point of this story is the slow, because even The Innocents, I don't remember much, because I've seen The Innocents, but it was a long time ago, so I don't remember it too well. But that was a slow burn of a movie, and that was fine, because it was a slow kind of psychological building to things. This movie is so insecure of people knowing what to feel or what to think and what the tone's supposed to be, that it has to do these cheap scares just to say, hey, don't worry, we're a horror movie. We're still a horror movie, don't worry about it. It can't just create tension, it has to like, blah, boo.
And you know what I would even say with that though is, I don't even think the scares were good on a like what you come to expect on like a generic level. Like I think they're like, cause they go by so fast that there's so many instances where it's like, oh yeah, I think there was something in the mirror, I didn't really see what it was, but, and it's like they are doing the cheap generic thing where, hey, this pops up and there's a loud music sting, but they're like so fast about it that it's like, all right, like even like a shitty movie would know to like stay on this for a beat. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
like you can't even handle the blatant cheap generic stuff well.
Yeah, so with that, I think we'll just give the spoiler warning so we can talk about things, because honestly, I don't know how
Okay.
much there is left to say. My only guess for the time period would be that they didn't want to have like cell phones be a thing in it. But I mean, why
Sure.
pick the 90s specifically? You could have picked really any time. I guess 90s is the newest one that believably no one has cell phones, in the
Yeah.
vicinity. Like cell phones did exist in some fashion, but most people didn't have them yet.
Yeah.
So I guess
If they think
that's
the
why.
80s is too overplayed.
Maybe it was the 80s, and then they cast Finn Wolfhard and went, oh shit, we can't put it in the 80s. Like,
Yeah.
he's already been in like multiple 80s set things.
Like it does feel like they do want to have some weird like like grunge Nirvana kind of aesthetic to it because yeah, it's like 90s, you know, they mentioned Nirvana, you know,
There's even
Finn Wolfhard.
there's a Courtney Love song on the soundtrack as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And like, you know, there's like the scene with, you know, well, I mean, multiple scenes of him like, you know, playing music and stuff, and so it's like it seems like they wanted to do something with it, but it has zero impact in the movie whatsoever.
No, I mean, okay, so full spoilers then. So full spoilers for The Turning. I would say something on that point, but I need to do it after the spoiler warning. I'll
Okay,
take this
okay.
time to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to David Short, Tyler Hess, Alison M. Fordyce, and Cindy Palacios. They are $20 above patrons, but you can support us at patreon.com/mailfuzztv for as little as $1 per month, and that'll get you a bonus episode every single month, usually some wacky B movie that we find somewhere. In fact, we're about to record this month's right after this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So go check it out. $5 tier, you get to vote on an episode every month, and you also get to see the episodes a day early. So go and have a look, see if you're interested. Thank you to all of our patrons. We love you all dearly. But yeah, so full spoilers for The Turning. My only guess with the grunge thing is that maybe because the eventual twist is that no, she's just crazy, none of this is real, which the movie does not remotely like. For like, it sets up that her mother is in a hospital, and it sets that up at the start, and then it just basically isn't a factor until she gets like a letter from her mother at one point, and this is like an hour into the movie. This is like much later. And then from that,
like you've forgotten it at that point.
yeah, and even after that, it doesn't really feel that relevant until later. But there is one line from the caretaker, Mrs. Gross, who says, "Let's hope it's not genetic," and that is basically it. But my only guess is to the whole Nirvana thing and like tying it so much to all that is that because the first thing it's mentioned is his suicide and the memorial service for his death, and I guess like. No one knows what Kurt Cobain was going through his mind over that last day before he killed himself. Like, I don't know if they're trying to relate what happened with him and like her journey in this movie, like her final day of like craziness, which is really insensitive for a star because like,
oh, of course,
ultimately, like, I mean, I'm not saying you can't relate your story to a real world event and a real person like that, but it doesn't actually feel tied enough to the idea to make it even remotely worthwhile in doing that.
Totally.
So we'll go back and maybe talk about some other stuff throughout, but we need to talk about the ending. This is the main this is the main thing we're going to talk about because it's the only interesting thing the movie's got going for it. Is that so over the course of the movie she is seeing the face of someone, and we hear stories of this caretaker that worked on the grounds of the big house, and the suggestion later on is that the previous live-in tutor was harassed and potentially assaulted by this caretaker dude, and this caretaker dude was a really bad influence on Finn Wolfhard's character. More on what that influence was later, because that deserves its own little discussion. But she basically starts to see his ghost in the mirror, and then eventually the ghost like seems to be coming after her, and she's being creeped out partially by Finn Wolfhard, but then eventually by this ghost, and realizing, oh, it's him, it's the ghost of the man. He's here. He's in the mirrors and whatnot. And we have this big beat where as she's like scared running around, the Mrs. Gross comes up and Mrs. Gross is kind of this really mean old like stuffy woman the whole time, and she's like, oh, what are you doing, dear? Why are you out here? And basically the ghost essentially scares her into falling over the stairs, and I thought, oh, that's going to look like she pushed her. It's going to look like Mackenzie Davis did this. and she goes and gets the kids because she realizes they're in danger because of this ghost, and she drives them out of the grounds, which is a big deal because the girl's too scared to leave the grounds, thinking that she's going to die like her parents did. But they leave, they drive off, past the gate, and they're down the road, and it feels like the end of the movie that they're driving away. Very lackluster, not exciting or interesting, but it just feels like the end of the story that they're telling. And then,
just for the record, I kept expecting the twist to be that the daughter was dead, and if she like drove off the grounds, that like she would disappear or something.
oh sure, yeah, I could see why you think that. Yeah. So they drive off out the gate, and as the car's driving away, the camera kind of like does this transition. There's a transition where it becomes. I wouldn't quite say just a drawing, but basically the letter that she got from her mother from the psychiatric hospital about the hour into the movie was a series of like kind of just it just looks like black smears, but they're kind of vaguely in like shapes, and it kind of fades from this shot of the car going down the road to this black smeary painting, and you can kind of make out the car on the road a little bit now that you've seen it transition from that, and it comes back here like a gotcha, like no, this didn't happen. It's do you know that thing where some movies will do that fake out where the happy ending will happen and then it'll snap back to reality. It's kind of that, except the snap back to reality is like ages ago in the context of the movie. This is like 30 minutes ago, and
it felt like we had gone back so far in time. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wait a minute, how much of that was not real then?
And once again, Mrs. Gross says, well, I hope whatever your mother has isn't genetic. And Mackenzie Davis looks really worried. And I'm like, what? And then she goes into the room with the kids, and the kids are talking about her. And she sees the reflection of the caretaker did again. Was it Quint? And the reflection. And she's like, hey, did you see Quint? He's here. He's in the walls. And the kids are both like, nah, there's nothing there. And keep in mind, one of the main driving forces of the plot in the movie before the previous ending and the fake out here where it goes back to this part of the movie was that Finn Wolfhard, despite the fact that he's only like 14 or 15, is sexually harassing Mackenzie Davis's character, that he is saying inappropriate things, he's sneaking into her room at night, he's doing creepy things. So to then say that no, she's actually just crazy and none of that was real is kind of a weird, like, no, I mean, I won't say that it's going out of its way to be problematic, but when you actually stop and think about it, it is kind of like, that's a dodgy message. That's a dodgy message to be putting out there that this isn't real.
Sure.
I mean, it's kind of a weird, icky thing that you've got this underage kid being the harasser, and maybe that there's something in that to explore, perhaps.
And especially the fact that he is like, you know, very rich and powerful, and you do kind of get the sense that he feels like he owns her, you know.
Yeah, there's a whole thing where he's teaching her to ride the horse because she's never really done that, you know, beyond like one thing as a kid. And the way he talks about you have to break in the animal, you have to show it's who's boss and like, you know, assert your control. It feels like he's doing that with her, and it feels like he's, you know, and it's implied that this is all the influence of this Quint character who would take him drinking even though he's like 14 and stuff like that. So, and even the caretaker lady is like, like, no, he was born into privilege. He doesn't take his plate through. I do that kind of thing. Like, you know, she's like reinforcing all of his bad habits and his shitty attitude. Yeah. And it feels like that's what the horror movie is going to be about. It's going to be about him and whatever. And I didn't remember this specifically from the previous movie. I don't remember a lot from the 60s movie. And I don't know how, this arguably might be closer to the source material. I have no idea. But I didn't remember this tangent from it. So I didn't necessarily expect it to be the only thing the movie was doing, but it did feel like this was this movie's thing. So
I mean, I could be wrong, but I do believe I never actually read the book, but from what I heard, I do think that part of the book is that it's a little bit ambiguous as to, you know, whether this person's crazy or if there are actually ghosts and stuff. Well, which
this is the one thing I actually do remember about the original movie is that the ending kind of plays it very like she might have just been crazy. Like, you know, it's just, that was definitely the thing that I remembered from that movie. What the kids actually do in this and how they actually are is very different, at least from my vague recollection. And so you have this thing.
I think the problem here is it's not that there's nothing wrong with having that kind of ambiguity in the ending or whatever. But I think you kind of mentioned it before. Like, there's absolutely no like setup to this.
Oh
Like,
no, this is what I was getting to with this scene. That's what I was explaining for the Wolfhard's thing, because
yeah,
we come in here and all of a sudden, like, him and the little girl are like, "Oh no, like there's nothing there. You're acting crazy," and it's this weird thing where his entire plot up until because if anything, I'd also complain that they kind of forget about him a little bit. There's a point where she starts seeing the ghost where we kind of just forget Finn Wolfhard exists for like 20 minutes.
yeah,
But we come in here after this sort of weird twist that we've come back to this point in time, and everything, like him now being this kid who's aware that this woman is maybe crazy and is maybe seeing things that aren't there. It feels like a good movie doing this twist. What it would do is that it would kind of recontextualize everything we'd seen with him, and maybe we'd understand better why, from her perspective, these things look like this, or why this was looking like that, or whatever. But instead, it just feels like this random thing where almost everything with him before this point in the movie just doesn't matter. Now he's just like he's still a rich little shit, but he's still just a relatively normal rich little shit in this scene, as opposed to the creepy building that they were doing before. It feels all irrelevant all of a sudden.
Yeah, like after the twist, it feels like they're completely different characters. Like it feels like they don't even know her or anything. Like they're so weirdly put off and afraid of her, and like even she looks different. Like after the end, like she looks all like, like frazzled and like has bags under her eyes and stuff. And it's, I don't know, it feels weird. It just feels like such a like a I don't know, like a betrayal of the movie or something, because it's like, all right, like none of this was hinted or gleamed at before. It's like you're just like changing the rules on us like in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah, and there's no subtlety. There's no, like you say, she looks different. She's got they're more frazzled looking and whatever. And then this scene, she's standing there just kind of being shocked that the kids aren't agreeing with her. She accidentally drops the girl's doll, and the face smashes. If only this was Brahms, that's all I'll say. And and then it just cuts to this scene, which I guess is her imagining this or something, but it cuts to this scene where I thought they were in like an empty swimming pool, which I guess they kind of are, but she's in like a bed in an empty swimming pool, which I guess backs up the idea that this is not a real thing that's happening, that it's more of a vision or something.
Well, if you go back to the beginning, the place her mother was at was in a swimming pool.
It like was, whatever. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, that's where she is. Yeah, she's back where her mother is in this hospital, but it only just occurred to me in this final scene how weird this looks. Like, why is this in a swimming pool? Maybe it's because they put a bed in there, and all of a sudden it really stuck out. Wait, this is a swimming pool.
Yeah.
Why are they in a swimming pool? But that's where the mother is, and the mother's got her head turned to her, and she's just kind of mumbling something. And Mackenzie Davis walks towards her, and the movie ends, I shit you not, where the mother eventually is about to turn around. We see Mackenzie Davis react and scream, and I thought, it's going to I thought, it's going to show that it's actually her, that maybe she's been in an institute this whole time or something, whatever, which would have still been terrible, don't get me wrong. The movie did not set up for that at all, but I thought that's what it was maybe about to do. Instead, as soon as she screams, we never see what the mother's face was, and the credits start playing with the image of like her hand sort of like caressing a painting. She's sort of like walking down a wall just with her hand sort of like dragging back across it slowly as the credits rise, and I'm like, what was those last 10 minutes? It was so nonsensical, and not in a way that it's like, oh, batshit insane, what the hell, David Lynch-esque. No, it was just like, there's decisions here on a filmmaking level and a narrative level that just don't make sense, even in like we want an ambiguous twist kind of way. The movie didn't set up for it. It's clunky as hell. The transition between the first twist, which is to, oh, we're back to this point where she got the letter, and then again to this weird dream sequence / memory / like reality, her realizing in her mind that she's the crazy one or something. This pulled this so far out of its own ass right at the end of the movie. Honestly, it may be one of the worst endings of any movie I've ever seen, and luckily the movie was shit before then anyway.
Yeah.
If not particularly notable. If this was good up until that point, I would be livid. As it is, I'm just dumbfounded at the decisions made here.
Yeah. No, it feels like something like if you're trying to work on something and you're having problems with it, and you get to a point where you're just like, I just need this to be done. Here, fine. It's not perfect, but we're finished. We can't keep working on this. Like it feels like that kind of mentality where it's just like, all right, we can't spend any more time on it. This is what's gonna be. Who cares?
If there was more stuff at the end, though, if there was more stuff shot for the ending, I would love to know how bad it must be for them to think that cutting like this and doing it this way was the better option. I am fascinated by that idea. Basically, I'm saying release the... What's the director's name? Hold on. I got
Alan
it.
Smithy.
Release the Sigismondi cut. Or
Okay.
Sigismondi. I don't know if it's a soft G or a hard G.
Yeah,
But,
I mean, I would love to know what the hell is going on as well.
Interesting, the director's name is Floria, which is very close to Flora, which is the girl's name.
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't know why that was the case, but it is.
And then, so if you do watch through the credits, basically all that happens is, as the hand is going through like the pool wall and everything, eventually that fades into just blackness, and then you see like the floating white spectral image of the Jessel, I think her name was, the previous caretaker.
Oh, right, yeah.
And basically after the credits, it just ends with kind of like a quick shot of her just floating. So that's all you get.
So the sad part is that like there could be something here. Like let's say the whole idea of this is that when she's telling her roommate at the start of the movie she's taking this job, she's sorry she has to go. Well, you could almost take this as she's covering for the fact that she has to go to like a rehab center because she's been acting erratically or something. Like she's having to go to some sort of hospital, and she's going willingly, but she's too ashamed to admit it. Like you could like play some subtext here. You could do something with this. But I don't know. Like it's a really fine line to walk when you want to reveal that the entire movie's kind of been a lie and through the perspective of a character who's not trustworthy. The problem is, though, because I guess it's suggesting that every time Finn Wolfhard said something like, oh, that tattoo makes you look sexy or something like that, he says at one point, and it comes off really weird because she's trying to be like a teacher to him, like almost like a surrogate mother to him, and he hits back with, your tattoo makes you sexy. Like, it comes off really kind of weird. But
I mean, like he straight up kisses her at one point.
That's true, yeah, no, because after he's snuck in the room, right? Was that same scene when he's in the room with her?
Yeah.
And he's caressing her face, and he says that there was a spider on her face, which doesn't answer the question as to why he's in the room in the first place, admittedly.
Yeah.
And then he sort of goes up for a kiss, and like, I mean, maybe there's something there, a horror movie where like a kid, essentially, I mean, obviously he's an older kid, but he's a teenager, but the idea that a kid is doing this and that no one will believe her because it's a child and she's clearly there's a horror story about social expectations that could be told there potentially.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff you could take from it because, yeah, you obviously have, like an idea of like class and privilege, and then, like certainly like some like sexual harassment stuff you can work with, but it's just nothing is handled well in this movie at all.
And if this is all in her head, then why is it like this? Was she abused at some point earlier in her life, and this is kind of like a replaying of it? Why is there a backstory of this caretaker and the previous like tutor? Like, why does that all exist in her head?
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of like shitty movies do this, where they have like just the easy scapegoat of like, oh no, the parents are crazy, so they're crazy too, or they're afraid they're gonna be crazy. Like, and I feel like I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I feel like that's something we've seen in other crappy movies.
I would be okay with someone's scared they're going to lose their mind because their parents did that as well. I'd be okay with that if the movie was actually that the whole time. Like
sure.
If the movie was actually her questioning what she was seeing and thinking, if it was doing that, then fine. But it wasn't.
Like there's never, like, you think at some point like her friend or something would be like, oh, are you seeing visions again, or are you afraid you're gonna see something like your mother did? But yeah, there's like nothing like that at all.
If anything, it's more like the boy for the first hour, just in the sense that she comes to a big house, she's the tutor for some kid. The kid just isn't a doll. There's some parallels there. And what I mean by that is in the sense that it doesn't feel like there's something else going on with her. It feels like she's a normal person walking into this world that's going to be the weird thing, right? And honestly, there's no. I feel like if anyone does happen to think this is good or likes this movie, I feel like they're going to say, "Oh, you just don't get the subtext here. This represents that." This is what I'm saying though, is that a good movie, like I would be able to look at this and say, okay, yeah, you can say that. Oh, she just takes like the information she's presented with and builds her paranoia into the information. So that's why there's this previous caretaker and all that, and all these various this backstory. But a good story would use that, and all the themes would represent something. All these elements would represent something that means something to her, and it would all kind of like feel like it clicks together. As it is, it just feels like this weird tacked on element that just comes out of nowhere. You know, we're 35 minutes into this review, and we're still talking about the ending. It's basically all we've talked about because it's the only interesting thing to talk about. I mean, we've went back occasionally and brought up moments. You know, and there's definitely beats where it kind of felt like they were taken from other movies. Like, you know, there's a bit where Wolfhard's like bouncing a ball, and it feels like The Shining, you know, on a smaller scale, where he's just bouncing the ball off the wall. What are you laughing at? What are you looking at? How dare you not pay attention to my wonderful commentary?
Well, because you mentioned if there are people that actually like this, I just brought up Amazon on my phone to see if there are any 5-star reviews.
Go on.
Just looking at, it's just funny looking at like one of the first reviews says, "Glad I ignored the 1-star reviews." It has 4 stars. The person says, "I seem to have totally different tastes in movies than most people on Amazon. Films that average 5 stars like Mandy and The Lighthouse for me were just a waste of money and time." It looks like most of the reviews are like 1 or 2 stars, but then there is a 5-star one that says, "Yes, 3 exclamation marks. Finally, my horror fix is satiated with this fantastic adaptation." And then I'll just it's pretty long, but I'll just read the first paragraph. It says,
"Go on.
The Turning is not for mainstream horror fans. It's a great it's a great psychological film with a lot of classic terror mechanisms from the genre and artistic details. I just finished watching it and am already theorizing about possible interpretations. This is true horror with a classic feel and based on the classic novella Turn of the Screw." It feels like I wrote that as a joke, but
that's like one of your tweets where you clearly just try to trigger people into reacting. It's baffling to me.
This is bad.
This is
even I can't like.
It's objectively bad, is what you're saying.
Yeah, like I mean, I can't even like, pretend to like this movie. It'd be too hard even for my expert skills.
Even though it's very similar in quality to The Boy.
No way.
That's you know it is. You know it to be true. Open your heart. Let the truth in.
But yeah, I don't know. It really is. It really is baffling. Like, especially, it's annoying that it tries to, like, make so many things seem important that just like are like waste of time. Like having this whole wing of the house being like, oh, like we don't go there. Like you shouldn't go there. And like
I forgot that because they never bring it up again.
Yeah, and then like there's so much stuff. There's like that, and then it seems like they're trying maybe to have some type of theme with like spiders or bugs or something. And then like what about that freaking the doll of the grandmother that's in her room?
Oh yeah, there's like a creepy mannequin that I thought was the caretaker lady.
Does it turn its head or something at one point? Like
it turns its head at the end of the scene, and she leaves it in a different room because she thinks it's creepy, and then it turns its head at the end of the scene, and then it's never brought up again.
But what does that mean though? Because like the character is not in the room, so if there is no creepy stuff going on and she's just crazy, then why are we as a viewer seeing that with our own eyes, as in instead of like something that we'd be experiencing through her? Like it doesn't make any sense.
Are you telling me that the twist in this movie doesn't hold up? Because no, you're totally right.
It just might.
we shouldn't be. Yeah, like the idea of there being creepy things when she's not around are ridiculous. Like if everything's in her head, if she's being paranoid and imagining all these things that are happening, imagining Finn Wolfhard saying these things, imagining the photograph she finds or the diary she finds from the previous tour. I mean, maybe it's as simple. I mean, that's a good point actually. Most of the stuff from the backstory comes from that diary. I mean, maybe like she had a similar experience to this backstory, and that's why it's is what it is. And
what's kind of funny is like the movie takes place in the 1990s, but like when you're going through like the diary, that feels like it's out of the 1600s or something. It's like the stable master and like the governess. Like it's like, all right.
So the sad part is that I feel like there is a story here about someone who's been through an abuse or an assault, and how it's left them traumatized, and how they're struggling to believe it happened, so they've built this like fake world around them, and they're like, there's probably a story here where we could get into like really analyzing what each of the elements mean. Unfortunately, the writing quality and the directing here, the writing mainly though, is just not up to par. It has nothing. It feels so shallow. It feels like it's just doing creepy generic horror movie things, not even half decent at that, just really, really poorly. And then it tries to give it all meaning and weight in this nonsensical ending that comes out of nowhere with very little build up. And
I mean, like, obviously this is like, again, I never read the I don't know what you, I was gonna say, like, I don't know if like it's a novella, short story, or full novel or whatever, but the original story, I never read it, but I've heard the name before. There's got to be something to it if it's something that is held in high regard in culture, and obviously it seems like other horror people like it. Like you said, like the next season of the very popular Netflix show is gonna be based on it, so there's got to be something there if it's continuously being adapted and everything. Yeah, so it's not like the story or the source material. It's like obviously there's something there because it's stuck around, but yeah, this movie doesn't do it like any favors whatsoever.
Yeah, I actually just looked up the original story on the Wikipedia. It was an 1898 horror novella by Henry James that first appeared in a serial format in Collier's Weekly magazine from January to April in 1898. So it was actually like so it was released in that way. I kind of was hoping it would give me like a brief synopsis. It gives me more just like a full plot summary. I wanted to read just a synopsis of the original story to see how similar it felt. Yeah. So it does mention some of the character names, like Miles is the boy, Flora's the girl. Like, it's got these elements to it, but
they kept the names.
Yeah. And music has a theme. Like, he does play music without permission, although I assume it was on a gramophone at the time. Yeah. So, yeah. And Quint is in the story. Yeah. So, I mean, the elements are there. That they've used the basic things that are in the story. Yeah.
Yeah, just did a piss poor job. Oh, one scene that did make me laugh is when she goes to his room and they're talking, and he just like gets up and starts going to the bathroom.
Yeah. Yeah, he also gets really pissy at one point where every time she tries to talk to him, he just starts hitting these drums.
Yeah.
so she can't hear her over. Yeah. Although the ending's way different here, by the way. I'm looking at how this ends.
Oh
yeah. Yeah. They did something different with it. So
the book doesn't end by like the writer going, all right, now let's pull back and realize that the painting she was looking at was actually the last 30 pages.
I'll tell you what, I'll read the last paragraph of this plot summary, right? So if anyone cares about spoilers for the book, or potentially, I guess, spoilers for the Netflix show that's coming up, The Haunting of Bly Manor, although having that, I've watched this movie now and I've seen the other movie, even though it's been a long time and I didn't remember it that well, I wasn't really concerned about that, because who knows how they're going to tackle this, but I'll give you the warning for that, just in case you want to go in cold to that series. So here's the last paragraph from Wikipedia, because I'm fascinated by this.
Okay.
So later, without permission, Flora leaves the house while Miles is playing music for the governess. The governess notices Flora's absence and goes with Mrs. Gross in search of her. So the governess being the Mackenzie Davis character, just that wasn't obvious. They find her on the shore of a nearby lake, and the governess is convinced that Flora has been talking to the ghost of Miss Jessel. When the governess finally confronts Flora, the girl denies seeing Miss Jessel and demands never to see the governess again. At the governess's suggestion, Mrs. Gross takes Flora away to her uncle, leaving the governess with Miles, who that night at last talks to her about his expulsion. The ghost of Quint, without even mentioning they got expelled, that was in the movie as well. Yeah. It's such a minor beat though, comparatively. The ghost of Quint appears to the governess in the window. The governess shields Miles, who attempts to see the ghost. The governess tells Miles he is no longer controlled by the ghost, and then finds that Miles has died in her arms. So it does have an ambiguous ending, by the sounds of it. It sounds like she thought he was being controlled by the ghost, and then she like, you know, like, did she accidentally kill this kid basically? Instead. But
it's like she's obviously seeing a ghost, but she's also like not letting other people see it, so you don't really get a confirmation if it is real or not.
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, the Wikipedia summary is not exactly the best thing to go on here, but
sure.
I was just curious to see like how similar the ending is. So it does have that element where the girl's scared of her, like, so there is actually, before the weird twist ending, might I add, there's hints that the kids are actually starting to be scared of her. That's it. You know, maybe if they'd done something with that, maybe if the movie said, hey, Flora's starting to be scared of her, and we'd go, but why?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then maybe the ending would actually help answer that, perhaps. But no, rough. And I'm not doing an impression of a dog. I'm just saying the word rough over and over. Yeah, I have very little more to add. What do you want to say, Tim?
So the scene where like Mrs. Gross dies, or you know, I guess, you know, not really dies, but you know what I mean. Like the other thing I thought was weird about that is, first of all, it's so dumb the way they do it. Like she like flips over the stairs, but it's like done in like slow motion. Like it looks like really bad. But then I mean, I guess it doesn't matter now since I guess that whole part was fake anyway. But when it first happened, like I kept wondering, like, all right, like if the ghost of Quint like could have done that like all this time, like why did like wait to do it until now? Like,
if anything, the only interesting thing about this is, and reminding me what the story is, and sort of looking up what the original story is, I'm fascinated by how much of this ambiguity will be in the TV show and, you know, in the Netflix season, because like I assume because it's like, you know, 8 or 10 episodes, they're going to have flashback episodes or whatever to the Quint stuff and all that, and I'm like, how do you do all of that and then still have this ambiguity at the end that, oh, maybe this wasn't real, this was all really just her?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know. At least I'm more excited for it because the people that making it have talent.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it definitely will be interesting to see, and I don't know, maybe they just kind of use it as like a springboard and have a lot of different ways to expand upon it. But I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah.
The turning.
Yeah. There's
stomach.
There's like so many like weird things too, like thinking that, well, like when Mrs. Gross says like she poisoned Quint, I guess that's in the whole fake period too, so we don't know if that's real. But it's so annoying. Like I have questions, but I feel like I don't care enough really to get any answers.
Yeah, I honestly, the movie before the ending is just really bland, and it's the same sort of stuff we've talked about 100 million times with other January and February horror movies. The, you know, your mainstream studio produced movies that just have no spark. There's no creative vision that you can sort of see on the screen. It's just doing the same old thing. The music's always in your face. It's not tense. It's not suspense building. It's none of those things. It's a failure in every conceivable way, and it's not the psychological like horror drama either that some on Amazon may claim it is. So no, I have to say that it's almost like, I'll be honest, for the first two thoughts, this is really bad, but it's not as bad as the reputation, you know, implied it was, and then it got to those last 10 minutes. I went, you know what? No, fair enough. Earned it. They earned that F.
The scene too where they're playing like flashlight tag. Like I just any one of these movies when a character starts to gear up and be like, hey, we're gonna play this game. It's just like I know there's gonna be like some dumb, cheap, generic scare that's gonna come from it, and I mean, again, like I feel like this is even like mediocre on those levels. Like, yeah, it's very cheap and generic, but even like worse so than a lot of the kind of regular run of the mills movies that you watch from that.
Yeah, so as soon as they're saying let's go play flashlight tag, you know for a fact that this is just going to end with her in a cramped hallway.
Yeah.
Looking, like getting scared because she thinks she sees something in the distance and being like, what was his name? Miles. Miles, stop messing around. Miles, this is enough of this now. And then obviously it's not Miles. He's up eating Pop-Tarts with everyone else. Maybe wants some Pop-Tarts. I'll give it that.
And also, I mean, we didn't really mention it, but I think it kind of goes without saying, like, obviously, when you do see the ghosts and stuff, they're CGI and it looks bad.
Oh yeah. Actually, that was something I was hitting at earlier before we got to spoilers, is that when, in the brief moment where she's, like, convinced she's seen the ghost, and the ghost kind of, like, kills Mrs. Gross, the ghost just looks, it's got this sort of, like, flickering effect on it, where he's kind of, like, shaking, and he's got, like, a wavy effect over the top of him. It looks bad. It just, like, that was what I was talking about earlier. I said, like, it got laughably bad for a bit before it got, like, really bad in another way. Before it got to this awkward twist stuff.
And we didn't even really talk about like the dream sequences too. Like the one where she's like, chasing or running away from Miles or chasing him or whatever with a horse, and you see Quint on the horse too. It looks so bad.
Well, I think that was trying to hint at what we just read about from the original story, is that maybe Miles is such a little dickhead because Quint the ghost is actually possessing him.
Right, yeah, which is totally fine, but yeah, just in terms of like visual quality, I thought it just looked horrible. Like the really bad ghost on his back.
Yeah. It comes back to what we've said already, is that nothing in this movie actually is supported or works in hindsight when you get to the ending. Oh, the ending just makes all of it feel like, no, this was a different movie before then.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It's horrible. Tim, I think it's time to rate the movie. What are you giving The Turning?
I think I'm going to give it a 2. Which I guess like the those small little 2 points I guess is just for one, the performers, like at least they were good. Like they don't have anything to work with, but at least they're like not terrible actors. And then I guess the other one is like, well, again, like like you always say when you rate stuff, it's like, well, at least the camera wasn't like pointed at the floor. Like at least on a technical level, it's not like hard to watch, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I really can't think of any other merits or anything at all that would like give it any other points.
Yeah, these actors deserve better material for sure. Yeah, I really can't argue with it too. The reason why it's not a 1 is because like you say, it's more technically proficient, at least from a visual point of view, compared to Birdemic or other like true 1 out of 10 things, or maybe Birdemic's a 0. To be honest, it doesn't even have sound mixing. But like, I feel like the movie, like, I don't like the directorial choices. I think the 10 scary scenes, if you will, are shot far too generic. They're uninspired, but it doesn't do some of those culprit-y things that I really hate. Like, it doesn't have the blue tint, at least, so it looks fine from a color perspective. It looks, okay in that sense. Yeah, 2 out of 10. This is one of the most baffling endings. I saw someone online, and we've not done this movie yet, and I'm assuming at one point we will, but the ending to this is only worsened, or only beaten, in terms of how bad it is, by the film, which the title maybe we'll come back to in a second, but the one that ends with go to this website to find out the true ending.
Is it
Devil something? The devil inside?
Is it I trapped the devil?
Maybe I Trapped the Devil? Something with the devil in it. There's a devil in the title.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually did think about that as well, because yeah, it did make me think of like, yeah, like what other movies have like, just as bad horrible endings, and yeah, like I mean that might be the only one that beat it because it literally like does not give you the ending. But Jesus, yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, that is The Turning. You can let us know what you think of the movie in the comments below. Please do liking's a really easy way to support everything we do, and it really helps us out if you're on YouTube. That is, obviously if you're onto the audio version, then you can give us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever. That helps us out too. It lets these services know to recommend us out to other people, so you're helping us a lot by doing that. And we also mentioned, of course, Patreon earlier on for financial support and get some bonuses for your trouble, so go do that. Get us on Twitter at ScreamsMidnight. And actually, there's a little bonus section here at the end, Tim. It's going to be a new feature on all of our movie reviews.
Oh my.
Right? It's called Tim's Going to Pose for the Thumbnail.
Okay.
And the reason for this is because a lot of the time during the movie your head's cut off or whatever, although it's actually okay right now to be honest, but we'll make a fun segment. So I admit this is really just for the video because you can't see it in the audio. But Tim, I would like you to pose, because now you know I put our faces on the thumbs for YouTube.
Okay, yeah. Alright.
So I'm going to hit the 3, 2, 1 and you're going to strike a pose, right?
Okay.
You only have to hold it for a second. As long as you're not moving for a second, it's fine. Alright.
Sure.
3, 2, 1. That's you're good. You're good. Admittedly, your hands are all cut off at the edges, which is kind of what I was trying to avoid. But honestly, that was good enough that I'll make it work somehow. But there you go. That's your new little quick segment. I mean, that'll be the longest it ever takes because I had to explain what it was to Tim.
Sure.
So, thank you very much, guys, for joining us once again. We appreciate it loads. Keep watching scary movies. Look out for more episodes coming soon. But that is us. So thank you very much for joining us. We are Screams After Midnight. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.